glad to have you all today. This is our third time for each of us to take a look at the question of AI and how people who have aphasia can actually get better on time. So we now have three people who will help us to talk about the stuff about AI every day. The stuff is different, so your work will be helpful for us to move ahead for all of us. So thank you. Go for it.
So I'm Lyssa Rome. I'm a speech therapist. So I'm just going to go in alphabetical order. First is Jen McDonald Peltier, who has worked in the disability community since her college days as a personal care attendant. She has a single subject teaching credential in English and a master's in special education, and has been working in assistive technology for over 25 years. She's a RESNA certified assistive technology professional and has been working in augmentative and alternative communication, or AAC, for over 20 years and has a graduate certificate in AAC. And then we've got Dr. Maria Munoz, who is a speech language pathologist and a professor at the University of Redlands. She received her doctorate from the University of Texas as a participant in the Multicultural Leadership Training Program and completed a postdoctoral fellowship in aphasia at the University of Arizona. She conducts research, teaches, and publishes in the areas of treatment outcomes and aphasia and the manifestation of aphasia in Spanish and English bilinguals. And last but not least, we've got Kiiya Shibata, who's a licensed and certified speech language pathologist who focuses on primary progressive aphasia and primary progressive apraxia of speech and frontotemporal degeneration. And her clinical practice focuses on speech language intervention and clinical education for families who are impacted by PPA and PPAOS. She's currently pursuing a PhD at Vanderbilt University, so joining us from Nashville, where her research focuses care access for people with PPA and PPAOS with minoritized ethno-racial IDs and languaging practices.
I can start. I do have a little PowerPoint. As you know, I'm Maria Munoz. I know a lot about aphasia. I know nothing about AI except for how I use it and how I see it in kind of the world. But this idea of AI and aphasia and what it might offer people with aphasia has been really an interesting one to think about. So I turned mine into an AI wish list for aphasia, how I would like to see AI develop and what I think it could offer. I very much still think we need the human component. We need someone who they're connecting and understanding what's going on and making recommendations. But I do think there are holes in what SLPs can offer that AI could help. And so I thought I would address some of what I think AI could do for people with aphasia. So one of the things, I'm a bilingual speech pathologist. I grew up speaking Spanish. A lot of the clients I've worked with are bilingual or predominant or only speak Spanish. And one of the things that I still hear is, well, they told me they couldn't see me because nobody there speaks Spanish or nobody there speaks my language. And so they couldn't offer me services. And so there are people that are not receiving speech therapy services because they don't speak English. And I think that's incredibly unfortunate and is not something that should be happening. And so it would be, there's a lot of ways where AI, the quality of automatic interpreting software and apps has gotten really good. And I think there may be ways for us to assist in interpreting information from one language to another to allow for access to some services. That wouldn't be ideal. I mean, you'd want someone who could be more flexible and who could confirm that what was being said is accurate. But I do think that it could provide access, particularly in less common languages. 90% of speech language pathologists identify as English speaking. And so if we could provide services in another language, that would be helpful. The other way I think would be interesting in terms of AI is interpreting to be more aphasia friendly. So if somebody says something and AI breaks it down or changes it, adjusts it to the level of the person who has aphasia. We know there's a big range of aphasia abilities. And so AI could learn about someone's abilities and then interpret what's being said in a way that matches their abilities. Related to that, I think translating. So this is the difference between interpreting. Interpreting is verbal, translating is written. So are there materials, speech pathologists use workbooks and they use printed materials, or there's reading, using AI to translate those materials into another language could be really beneficial. It can be hard to find material in languages other than English in the US. But also, again, interpreting it to be more aphasia friendly. There's research that's looked at what makes something readable for people with aphasia. So larger fonts, more spacing, using icons or graphics to help support with the understanding. So could I submit a text to AI and say, make this aphasia friendly, and have it add those kinds of characteristics to make it more aphasia friendly? Also, it's AI. It's really smart. So can we as speech pathologists input information about the person's reading abilities, and so that whatever AI generates matches their reading abilities? When we talk about, learning, one of the things we talk about is comprehensible input. This is kind of coming from children's literature, but I think it has relevance here. And I+1. So your level of independence and just a little above that, right? That's where learning occurs. So having AI not just put it into an aphasia-friendly format, but just slightly above that person's ability so that it's challenging them and learning is happening. And then AI can adjust the difficulty level as that person becomes more comfortable with reading. That would be ideal. I would love to see that from AI. And I think that's something that something like software could do for people with aphasia. Another thing I thought of that I would love to see in terms of what AI can do. I work at a university clinic, so we don't have that many patients because we're limited. So I may see 6 patients. I may have 6 patients and 6 students assigned to me in a given semester. And so conversation groups are hard. People are at different levels. They have different strengths and weaknesses, and it can be hard to find people to match. And so could AI create a virtual conversation partners in languages other than English, but also to match again the aphasia level, just above the aphasia level of the person, and having varieties to be more various difficulty levels to be more challenging for the person with aphasia, but they have someone that they are practicing conversation with and who is responding in meaningful ways. And it could be set up in a number of different ways. Topics, if you as someone with aphasia want to talk about certain things, you want to, talk about your plans for the holidays. Well, we'll put that topic into AI and it generates different opportunities with similar vocabulary, similar themes that you can then practice what you want to say. So when you go and see your family at Thanksgiving, you have practiced some things that you might want to talk about in scenarios that feel real. You have people listening, you have people responding. And I think it can adjust, I'd love to see AI adjust the difficulty level based on how the person with aphasia is responding. Because, just like everybody, we have good days and we have bad days. And so on a day when you need a little less difficulty in the language you're talking in, the AI can adjust for that. Or if you're having a good day and you can deal with a little bit more difficult language, have AI adjust for that, as well as change over time. Because the idea is that your language is getting better as you move forward with this. And so it would be wonderful to do that, and to be able to do that in languages that aren't represented by SLPs would be phenomenal. The other thing I thought of, this is something I thought of in terms of being able to hear yourself. So one of the things, we all know, we've been hearing about deep fakes and people faking that, the Governor Newsom is saying something he didn't say, and it sounds convincing. So AI is doing this already, generating voices that sound like people and people we know. And I thought about the times when I've called a patient to leave a message, to make an appointment or to just check in on something, and I hear their voicemail and it's their voice before aphasia, and how different that sounds. And it's almost a little startling because I did not know them when their voice and their speech sounded that way. And so with so much that people are recording, could AI take your samples of your voice in your pre-stroke world and turn those into your own voice so that you can listen to yourself say these things you want to say? And so the model that you're getting is actually yourself. And you can practice those things that you want to say, hearing yourself say them. I think that would be really interesting. And I think there would be some motivation to that. And I just feel like your brain would connect with that. Like, I know this. Our voices sound a little different when we hear it, but I think your brain would connect with that. Like, this is me talking. This is me. I can do this. I would be really interested to see what the benefit of hearing yourself talk the way you want to talk, what kind of benefit that would be. The key would be having a clinician kind of figure out what kinds of things you want to practice saying and making sure it's at a difficulty level that someone with aphasia can manage. When we talk about conversation and communication, we often think about as information exchange. I'm going to tell you this, you're going to tell me that. But so much of what we talk about is about social connection. Like, you go to Thanksgiving's coming up, you go to Thanksgiving and you hear the same story everybody's told 1,000 times. Nobody needs to hear the story again, right? We like to hear the story again because it connects us. It creates our community. It shows we love, right? And so are there ways for me to paint a picture of something I did or something someone I love did and have AI generate different stories from that picture, using the names of the people in the picture, using the locations that we went to, so that we can talk about that time we went to the mountains and, got stuck at the lake because there was a bear behind us. I don't know. But you feed the details into AI and it can generate different stories that revolve around your picture and your experience. And can it look at the picture and generate stories that you could practice and so this is going to give us stimuli for therapy and prompts for therapy that are personalized. This is about you telling your story. And I think that can be hard for a clinician to support because we don't always know the story. But if AI can do that, I think that would be a wonderful use of AI. And then communication, I don't know how many people here have aphasia and use things like an AAC device, so in Graphica, or I often encourage my clients to use gesture initially and to get their message across because it reduces frustration. If I could tell you, I had one patient once who he was in the car and he was doing this gesture, and the family figured out that, oh, he's wondering if we turned off the stove when we left, or did we leave, and we cooked tortillas for breakfast, and he was wondering if we turned off the stove. That's what he was asking with his gesture. Can AI help us build complexity, right? We can start with just this, but can we build it up to have more meaning and more language? And I would love to have AI help me with that. That's a hard thing to do. So that the devices and the gesture can only do so much, right? Because often we're talking about single words or single ideas. Can AI help us build up into multiple ideas and multiple concepts and more complex concepts in really kind of structured ways? That's the help I would love, that I think would really benefit people with aphasia, that AI could help us with. So that's my AI wish list. I think we're going to talk some at the end and answer questions. I would love to know what's on your AI wish list for people with aphasia.
Okay, I did not make a wish list. I have something else that I think Gary can send out. I sent last night. So I just put together kind of like the easy and useful functions of AI for people, period, frankly, but also people living with aphasia. Basically, the three kind of top things that I teach the people that I work with to use, people with aphasia to use, is having AI help you write something And there are rules that I didn't know them until relatively recently, but when you ask like ChatGPT or any of these AI platforms to write something for you, the more direct and specific you are, the better. But that can be difficult if you're having word finding difficulties or difficulties piecing together the grammar markers of what you want to say. So with most of the AI platforms, you can have a profile. Some are totally free, many are very inexpensive, and most also have like an upgraded version that you can purchase if needed, or if you want it to basically be a little bit more robust. I don't find the need to use the highest levels, really, even in my work, including the work that I do with the people with aphasia that I work with. Regardless of what platform you're on, you always want to tell AI like what you want, who you want it for, and how you want it to sound. So I want to write a text message to my friend, letting them know that I'm going to be late. And then I give it the tone too. Like, I want it to be funny, or I want it to be light. I want it to be really sorry or apologetic. And so the more kind of specific you can get, the better. And with any platform that lets you kind of save projects or save folders, ideas, save chats, it will learn the way that you communicate over time. And I've made a lot of custom GPTs for people that I work with where I tell it, all of the ways that they use and understand language so that it can kind of help to fill in the blanks. So that's the first like great use for people, including people with aphasia. Another awesome use is just having it explain things, like Dr. Munoz said, having it translate for you, and it can read out and stuff too, or interpret. And so forms or anything that you want to read that is a little bit just either you're not able to read it, or it just takes maybe more effort than it's worth to read, you can copy and paste that into Chat GPT or another AI platform, or you can take a picture of it and share it, and it can condense that for you into aphasia-friendly language. And like on mine, I have specific definitions of what aphasia-friendly means to me, or the different types of aphasia. I have them all saved in a rule book so that I can say, okay, give me this paragraph back, but I want it to be accessible for people with semantic variant aphasia. And it will give me all of the pretty complex stipulations that means. So it can be really quick to help you get the gist at least, or get it point by point, however much you want, that it can give it to you, as long as you tell it, right? And your speech therapist or a friend or anyone who's comfortable on AI can kind of help you give your AI tools so that it's giving you language that you want. And, in my case, if there are any clinicians on too, like I have a different folder for every like subtype of communication difficulties that people might have that I work with. And I also have individual folders for people that I work with. So I'm like, okay, Mr. So-and-so we don't use names on there, but this is his rules. Everything that you give me, I want you to give it to me in either like simple grammar, simple syntax, so you're not having to process a lot, or syntax that only has sentences with conjunction. So something, 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 and something, something, something. And I can give those stipulations. And over time, I can say, okay, now I want like 30% of it to be the really simple ones. And I want the other 70% to be the more complex ones, because that individual is practicing the more complex sentences. And finally, easy, useful function of AI is to just help plan and organize your day, your appointments, your projects. It can help you make lists. You can tell it what to put on the list. It can also help you think of things to put on the list. So you say, okay, I am going to go join Gary on a beautiful tropical beach, and the weather's going to be nice and warm. We're going to swim a lot. What are some ideas of what I should bring? And instead of you having to kind of go through the cognitive process of a mental checklist, it can give it to you there. And then you're like, oh, you know what? I do want to bring my goggles. Or, oh my goodness, you're right. I should bring some tanning oil or whatever it is. And it can also help you plan your week out too. So if you give it like, okay, I have to do all of these things this week. I have an appointment on Tuesday at 4, and I have an appointment Thursday at 10. What is the best way for me to spread this out throughout my week? I also want 2 days off during that week. And so it'll give you ideas of ways that you can do that. Those are my 3 tips. I will leave it at that, but I am happy to talk more about it at question time.
Okay.
All right, my name is Jen. I go by Tech Jen, which is my favorite title to separate me from all the other Jens on the planet. And Dr. Munoz, especially, I loved your presentation because I know little about aphasia and a lot about AT. And so when you were talking about certain things, I was like, oh, yeah, it already does that. So like the voices, now that's just built into iOS that you can make your own voice from your voice. You can make a text-to-speech voice. And so there are very cool things that are happening. I do want to just say that the evolution of AI has been around since the 60s. And so it's just that AI has evolved. And so I'll just give a couple different examples. So let's take discriminative AI. Being able to recognize speech recognition tools that you can voice type with, that's discriminative AI. It is taking a sound stream and parsing that sound stream into words and phrases. And then predictive AI then adds punctuation. And so another example would be optical character recognition, where you can take a picture of text and then have something read the text to you. It first has to take those pieces of the image and be able to discriminate, oh, that's text in that, not just not text. So that's text, and then be able to say what text that is. And now generative AI, which is really, when we hear AI these days, what we're thinking about is generative AI, is rather than doing like spell check and being able to style check or spell check, being able to instead generate something that has those elements of style and elements of grammar in it. So that's kind of the difference. And AI is continuing to evolve. Next will be agenic AI, which is started in about 2023, where, as an example of something that a human would do, agenic AI will use memory and planning and reasoning to autonomously pursue a goal, like plan and carry out a science fair project. It would be an easy example. of an agenic. And then there's also physical AI, self-driving cars. So the current AI that Kiiya was talking about was largely a language-based interface, right? Self-driving cars have very little language input. They have sensor input from our world, right? And so they're taking in information from our world and then you generating things with that. So anyway, what I was thinking about in AI's current form, the boon and the bane of AI is the language-based interface. Also, we talk about large language models. AI does not have human experience. It has the records of human experience, which are not the same, right? Because there's a lot in the human experience that is not captured in the written record of human experience. And so there are some limitations there. But to get back to the verbal language or written language interface, language is at the heart of the challenge for someone with aphasia. And both in that expressive language. So Kiiya, you were talking about having to have those very detailed, specific prompts, right? And so one thing I thought about was, could I have like a flow chart, decision tree type structure that allows me through my AAC device or in direct communication with my GPT device to be able to, what kind of writing do I want? And here's my choices. And then who am I sending it to? And I can have the relationship. And what tone do I want? So that I have these choice menus rather than having to generate the verbal prompt or the written prompt on my own from an expressive language standpoint. I also loved both of you talking from a receptive language standpoint, that changing the lexile level, changing the sentence structure, changing the types of sentences, adding images, adding colors, something as simple as adding a color so that my eyes can track this one ends in red, the next one starts in red. So something maybe as simple as a visual tracking aid, right? Or something that highlights every word. These are all things that currently exist actually, to something that can change the lexile level, which also already exists, but I have to tell it which lexile level. And so again, if I could give it samples of my speech for GPT to then analyze, to decide, oh, okay, this is the language level that I want to put the language parameters, the language characteristics that I want to translate everything into for this person. I think that would be really awesome, because yeah, right now, a lot is trapped in that verbal interface, whether it's written verbal or spoken verbal. And that is a challenge for aphasics. Go ahead, Kiiya, you were unmuting.
I was just gonna like agree 10 times over with what you're saying, like that it being stuck in the written verbal, or you could talk to it too, but that written verbal,
It's a language-based
medium,
interface, regardless of
it
what
is, and
format. It is a language-based interface.
people without aphasia have to learn kind of how to talk to it. And so again, we're stuck in this situation where people with aphasia are kind of stuck with their speech therapist or somebody that knows and can tell AI how to generate or translate language, written language. And like it's all there. This could happen. This could be built. We just have to, especially I think as a community of people with aphasia or that work with people with aphasia, it's on us to demand this is a need. We're creating a system that is helpful, but again, not in an equitable way. We want to take reliance off of a speech therapist or somebody else for that interface. So that was a
one of the things that I was thinking about, so if I had a wish list, would be, I'll call it Smart Siri, so that I can give my desire in whatever ways I can express my desire. And so that Smart Siri can identify not only the sounds coming out of my mouth, but also the movements coming out of my body, and maybe even the, so that's an audio sensor and a visual sensor. Let's just even just stick with just those two sensors for the moment, right? So that it can take that and devise a prompt to then support me to clarify, and then devise another prompt to support me to further clarify. And in my imagining, because I do a lot of AAC, so I have a lot of different experience with different AAC apps. And so in my sense, it would be like, I can give you very little input and you can extrapolate effectively. AI can extrapolate now, just not necessarily, because that's another piece of the puzzle that I was mulling over, which is the verifiability of AI's output, right? Which is unrealistic to expect the person with aphasia who's interfacing with the AI to be the verifier. That's an unrealistic expectation. And so making sure that there are controls either in the input or in the extrapolation to minimize that risk. And so that's why I was thinking of AAC pathways to help you generate your prompts, because really right now it's all about the prompts.
Can I ask you a question?
Heck yeah.
So I have been working on this project with some programmers for a client that I have doing really just that. She can kind of give it everything that she can, and it will say, do you mean this, this, or this? And like, I mean, I built a custom GPT that can do this, but I also want it to like, or we made it so that it can read texts, Zoom chats, it can listen to the Zoom or the conversation, and it can put it in like subject, verb, object, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And then she could hover to see like more detail, but that's there. But the big like hiccup is the visual piece of it, the visuals, and whether it's like screen capture or screen recording, or I mean interpreting someone's individualized gestures. That part I think is a, call it a mountain, but a little peak on the way of the mountain to get to. And so I was just wondering, like, it sounds like you've thought a lot about this too, like what your kind of vision for the future is, or where you see hope in that from the whole world basically of ATAC.
At this point, I just want to make sure that we have some other kinds of questions which people might want to talk about moving along in terms of what we've got to say.
Thank you, Gary. So how quickly, I know that you create templates or something sort in Chat GPT, how easy is that done? And then just to keep up with times, it just seems like it would be time consuming. I know you do that a lot. Very helpful. Just I know with changing times, so we talked about this on some other webinars, slang, things like that, that you may need to add in at different times, or accents. Like, how easy is that to produce in those templates?
Really great question. It does not take a lot of time to set up. I think the biggest, like Jen was saying, like Tech Jen was saying, the longest that it took, or the thing that takes the longest, is kind of learning to tell it what I want and come up with the prompt. And sometimes I'll give it the prompt, and then maybe like after I've done a bit with it, I'm like, oh, I see a little gap in information I gave it, or in its interpretation of what I gave it. So that part can take a little while, but generally, like for everything that we've kind of talked about today, it doesn't take too long. In terms of keeping up with the times, that's all done for you. That's what like the company does. So
Got it.
a large language model is just kind of like taking all of written language ever, and it's computing a bunch of really, really fancy statistics. And it's not actually like communicating with us, right? It's just taking words and the way that words based on statistics go together. And so if a new slang word comes out, people are writing about it on the internet and all of the other places that they're getting data from, it's already going to be in that model's lexicon, in that model's word bank.
Yeah, the zeitgeist of the LLM.
My name is Craig, and I have had a stroke or aphasia for 21 years. And when I first started with the stroke, I couldn't speak. And then I only spoke one word for a year, and then I spoke more and more. But I just don't really know that AI is something that I'm going to do, because I have difficulties with speaking sometimes. And it is difficult. So, eh, you know, I think that it's more speech therapists should be doing this and not aphasia. It's, I don't know. Jen?
Yeah, I have some thoughts about that. One, I agree with you that intervention should be leveraging these kinds of tools more, because in the same way that intervention should be working to leverage the computer in your pocket and should be working to leverage the people in your life, right? These are all resources in your world that your speech therapist should be helping you leverage to access receptive and expressive language. I would also say, when you said sometimes I have trouble speaking, as an AAC specialist, the first thing I thought of was AAC, because icon-based AAC leverages recognition memory rather than recall memory, because the words are there. It's not all the words, because only a keyboard has all the words, and that relies on recall memory. But robust icon-based AAC relies more on recognition memory. And so because of that, it can maybe be more accessible when, depending on what's causing the language to the speaking to be harder. There are also new generations of AAC that have AI built in. One is called Flex Speak, and that one I can give a few words and then hit my magic wand and it can give me a bunch of phrases that I might want to say. Another one is called ALEK, A-L-E-K. And that one also is a little bit like I hit one button, two buttons, three buttons, and then it produce a whole phrase depending on what my choices were. And I have not extensively looked at either of those, but I am aware of them. And that is kind of, I think, a wave of the future.
Okay.
For me, I'm a white man who is gay, but for people who are Black or brown, people who have had aphasia, it's even more difficult. And if all of these AI is is if I can't understand it, other people aren't going to understand it. And I also think that speech therapists are predominantly white females, and that doesn't help you any either. So what can happen to AI and speech therapists, and for you guys to really think about where are these other folks?
This whole conversation about AI can be overwhelming because there's a lot AI can do, right? And we're leading with AI because that's the topic of this talk. But as a speech pathologist, AI isn't the goal, it's a tool. And so
Right.
my first question would be, what do you want to be able to do in your life? How can AI help you with that? So we're going to provide you supports so that you can use AI, and then we're going to fade those supports out so that you can be at home using AI on your own, right? So our job wouldn't be to do AI and then walk away. Our job is to help you use AI to meet your goals the way you want to. And that would always be my first question. What do you want to do? And then how is there a way for AI to make it easier for you to do that? But it's always about what the person with aphasia needs first and foremost, in my mind.
Right. Right.
So I want to endorse that from an assistive technology framework. And there are two frameworks that I'm going to use. One is the acronym SETT. And that was designed for students. S was student, but it's so elegant that I've just changed the S to a P for person. So AT are tools to help a person access a task in an environment. P, person, E, environment, T, task, T, tools. What's key is that the consideration of a tool and the features of the tool come after you have considered the features of the person, the environment, and the task. Because it is the features of the tasks that the person wants to do. What is it about that task that makes it difficult for that person, right? And the environment where they've got to do that task. Those features lead to tool features. And so that's really great. Another framework from my mentor, Shelley Haven, and she's going to be publishing a book with this framework, is TOAST. And so it's a very person-centered one. So as a person, TOAST. T, what is my task? What is it I want to accomplish? O, what obstacles am I facing to accomplish that task? A, could be accommodations or any way around it. And if not, S and T go together. If there's no way around it to get to this task because of these obstacles, I need a strategy with a tool, not just a tool, a strategy with a tool. And so that gets in part to what you were talking about, Craig, that just, and what you were talking about, Dr. Munoz, that just throwing a tool at it is not accessing the task, right? I need a strategy to use that tool to overcome the barrier to access the task.
And in terms of like racial, ethnic, linguistic equity, because we've identified that speech therapists are overwhelmingly monolingual, overwhelmingly white, and overwhelmingly women years ago, literally decades ago, and it has not changed. The culture of the profession has also not changed. And that's a problem because it's not super fun to be in it as like a bilingual provider or person like with not blonde hair. Even sometimes we can go as far to say. And so we're not attracting more clinicians. And I think a cultural change is clearly going to take longer than a tool for AI that can help those clinicians learn in a quick and dirty way about kind of some basics of whatever the person's background is. So instead of reading through an in-depth linguistics book about Tagalog, maybe they can say, hey, I mean, definitely, I've done this in AI. They can say, hey, in English, when we say something blah, 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 we're using, like, you didn't have to say that part, but they can ask about Tagalog linguistics, right? And so the way I usually go about it is I'm thinking about something that I know with my experience about aphasia, but I know it in an English, white, educated, dominated sample, or also oftentimes the individuals we work with. And so I'm like, how might this apply to another person from a language standpoint? How can I kind of take those building blocks of the underlying theory of the therapeutic approach and apply it to a language or a structure that I'm not familiar with and or has not been studied? And that's where collaboration with your interpreter or translator, if you're having written stuff too, but collaboration with your interpreter and collaboration with the community around the people that you're working with can be really helpful too. It's like, you're like, okay, I know these like inner workings of the language that we're operating in a technical term. You guys actually know it. How can we work together to meet the common goal of helping this person that you love?
To me, this discussion has been really interesting and really helpful, I think, because as Craig, you were saying, I think that AI can feel huge and I think it can feel very inaccessible because of how language heavy it is right now. And I think that my hope is that we as speech therapists, as people who work with people with aphasia can think about how to access tools and design tools that will be more accessible and more equitable in all the ways that we've been discussing, both in this panel, but then also in previous panels, thinking about language and race and and aphasia too, right? And language disabilities. So I like the idea of keeping the people at the center of everything that we do. So thank you, Jen, for that acronym. I wrote it down.
Me too.
Yeah, like I said, SET has been around since the 90s. There are other AT models, but I love SET. It's just comprehensive and so elegantly succinct. And Toast is also a wonderful model. Again, Shelley Haven is, well, she's hopefully publishing a book about it soon. I have to get chapters back to her.
Like
Well,
you
listen,
said, use the computer. How can I use the computer in your pocket to help you? It's the same thing with AI. It's just that now the therapist got to like get a little in training about AI, but you can ask AI itself and it'll tell you.
I think that we are actually, in terms of our time, we've done it. It's been great to hear for people to talk about, some of these key questions around aphasia. And to end off, I want to just appreciate everybody being able to talk honestly about some of the stuff that we've been talking about, some of it that is kind of difficult. And as we know, it's going to happen. We're going to make sure that people who have aphasia talk about how we're going to be able to use some of this work for us. So we appreciate this discussion, and we're hoping that it'll be something that we'll be able to talk with over time. So thanks very much for doing it. And we're hoping to have another time with people to get better for ourselves. Thank you.